We were asked to discuss this. Yesterday, news comes out as Eli Gold released the fact that he was not returning to the Crimson Tide Sports Network. Eli has been the voice of Alabama football for a very, very long time,
35 years.
35 years. Said he was asked not to come back, basically. It was not his decision. That essentially, my understanding is, his contract was not renewed. His contract was up. And obviously is very hurt by the situation. There are a lot of Alabama fans that speak out on both sides. I don't listen, I am not unbiased in this. Chris Stewart has been a friend of mine for going on 30 years. Chris and I have worked together. I have known Chris for a very long time. He and I talk often, text often, play golf together. I have known Chris for a very, very long time. He is one of my better friends in the world, I would say that. So I can't really be unbiased in this one, Lance. I am thrilled to see Chris get this opportunity, and I think he's deserving of it. And I don't know how this was supposed to end. Everybody's like, Eli said today in an interview he expected to do it for another decade.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't,
I enjoyed listening to Eli growing up, but the problem is when you do have bad health and you take a sabbatical, sometimes you lose your gig.
Yeah.
I mean, and look, Chris obviously does a really good job with this. It's unfortunate for Eli, but it's Alabama's prerogative. They decide to go in a different direction. It's what happens. I mean, unfortunately, the older you get, the less you're respected by some people. It's just a fact of life. I remember a couple of our former colleagues. They would tell me at different times, just wait. The older you get, less people are going to like you. Less people are going to respect you.
We just talked about the opposite, though, with Clay the other day, is that some guys, the older they get, they become almost beloved. Like, nobody dislikes them.
Yeah, but I think there were some examples. Like Tim Brando was an example that was thrown out there.
Yeah. But, I mean, Corso was a good example. When Corso first started it, people hated Corso.
Yeah, I mean, it could go either way.
Yeah.
Look, and when you're passionate about something, as Alabama fans are, he was polarizing. A lot of people loved Eli. It was nostalgic for a lot of people, and then a lot of people were critical of Eli.
He said what? I said, I wish Eli and Alabama could have come up with a classy way to part. I will say this. Eli is doing a lot of interviews, and he's talking a lot of this. You're getting his version of what happened. I would keep that in mind.
Yeah, I mean, Cam, 3150 over there. It's Eli Gold. You don't treat him this way. Should have been allowed a final year. You don't know look, we don't either what exactly went down.
Yeah. You don't.
I think there probably could have been a settlement where, hey, look, let's not have any bad blood here, because I didn't think we would ever get to a situation where Eli would publicly come out and say, hey, it wasn't me.
Yeah. I don't know all the details. Obviously, we are not in on the day-to-day in a situation like that, but I don't also know what was offered to Eli that he didn't want to do, or Eli offered something to Alabama didn't want to do. I do not know. I would just say this, Lance, you and I have been our whole professional life in this industry. If you go into this industry thinking you're going to get to call your own shot out of this industry, you might get to do it, but 99.9% is you don't.
Yeah, this is more coaching. I mean, to use an analogy, the majority of people are going to get fired or they're going to be forced to resign. That's what we deal with in this industry. And it's just a sad truth.
It's just you generally don't get to call your shot out of this industry. You don't get to call your shot out of coaching. I mean, Nick Saban did. Who's the last really good coach that called his shot out of coaching? Bill Snyder?
Did Frank Beamer?
Frank Beamer, yeah.
Bill Snyder.
I mean, look at that. You got to do it a long time and be really successful to get to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the good news
to go out on your terms.
Eli there is so much accessibility to every single event out there. I heard Eli doing a game. It was really weird hearing him do a non-Alabama game, but I forgot when it was. It was recently. But, I know he's still doing the Birmingham Bulls, right? I think.
I don't know that.
I think he is.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, you could be. I mean, he was at one point. I don't know if he is.
But look, he's going to have opportunities. I mean, he's been out of NASCAR for how long?
5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of controversial the way that thing ended.
Yeah, it was. If you go read the reports on that, there were reports. I
hate it for Eli. Eli,
I do too.
Honestly,
I hate it this way.
Was never nice to me.
Yeah.
He
was not?
No.
See, he's never been anything but nice to me.
I think he made it a point. He didn't like the way, because I think there was a lot of people. Like,
he followed your show, right?
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that you and Dunaway loved the way I did a show early on. I mean, it was really different. I mean, I could be wrong.
The way I felt about it,
yeah. But I just remember Eli was not a fan of the way we did the show back in the day, and wasn't very nice to me. I didn't care. He got a little nicer as the years went by.
Yeah. I mean,
But I hate it for Eli. I remember I enjoyed listening to Eli do Alabama play-by-play as a kid.
Yeah, and again, so for those that don't understand how this works, the University of Alabama takes bids on who handles their multimedia rights, who handles the radio and the coaches show and the signage in the stadium. And Learfield Communications is the company that holds that for the University of Alabama. There's a different company that does it for Auburn. And they are the ones that they run this on the day-to-day. Now, Alabama approves the announcers. Learfield can't go out and pick anybody they want for an announcer. Alabama approves it, right? So this is done in conjunction with Alabama. Learfield is a money-making business just like we are, just like, ESPN is, just like they're trying to turn a profit. And they had a weird setup where you had a guy who was probably making a lot of money doing football. You had Chris, who's doing basketball. That's just a lot of people. That's kind of the old system. Like, most of the time, a school has one announcer that handles football and basketball. That was a rare situation you were in.
And I kind of like the universal announcer.
I kind of do too. Yeah.
I think there's something to that. And, Alabama felt this was time, and you're right, probably a business decision, because you're paying Chris X amount. You give him a little bit of a bump, but you clean that salary out from Eli.
And I personally, and again, I am not unbiased in this. Chris is a dear friend of mine. I think Chris is better. I think you're going with the better announcer there.
Yeah, and
now that's a matter of taste. You could say, I think Eli's better, and that's just a matter of taste.
Yeah, I would say that Chris, I enjoy Chris's call a little bit better, but Eli was really good at what he did. And Eli, the versatility, I mean, you can't deny it. When you can call hockey and you can call NASCAR, that's impressive.
Yeah.
But look, Eli's going to land on his feet. This is not the way you wanted this thing to go down. But as you said, you don't get to call your shot a lot of times.
You generally don't. Now, Eli has said today in an interview, I think with our friends at Fox 6 there, I think Lyndon Blake, as Scott was showing me, was the one that said this down at Fox 6, that he's got a deal lined up with a pro sports team that he'll announce tomorrow. So good. He's got another gig. It's not going to be Alabama football. Obviously, he did not want it to end this way. I hate that it's become public like this and that there's going to be this type of divorce, because, you would have liked, and maybe this will happen one day, you would have liked, the Alabama-Georgia game this year, and between the first quarter and the second quarter, they walk Eli out on the field, and everybody gets to stand and cheer for him and thank him for 30 years of doing Alabama football. You like for it to end that way, right? That's the way I think everybody would have wanted it.
Do you feel like it'll end that way?
I don't know. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of bad blood right now, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, based on what I read, and I just read a short little, I know ESPN had it, one of their top stories earlier, was last night or early this morning, but I read the AL.com article, and it seemed like Eli is a little pissed about this.
Oh, I think you read that right.
Yeah.
That is one way to put it. I think you read that right.
Yeah, but
that's unfortunate.
I don't think anybody can blame Chris Stewart. I mean,
Chris did nothing.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
I mean,
Chris did nothing except be good at his job.
Yeah, is going to take that opportunity.
Well, of course, yeah. I mean, Chris was the obvious one. He already did half the football season, or more than half the football season last year. So, I mean, he's the obvious guy to get the job. I don't think there's anybody out there. If Eli did it 5 more years, Chris is going to do it. Or Eli does it 5 more years and Chris takes another gig, and now you've lost the guy that was the obvious replacement. And that's a consideration you have to look at too, right? Like, if you've got we'll use the football analogy, if you've got a good offensive coordinator and your head coach is, starting to slip a little bit maybe, and you want that offensive coordinator to be your head coach, he may take another gig.
Yeah, look, and this is all about stability too. In my opinion, I'm going to say Chris is 45, 50.
Yeah, Chris is about my age. He and I are about the same age. He's a little older than me. He's an old fart. He's older than me.
Yeah, so right at 50. I mean, you could get Chris for another 2 decades. I mean, that's just realistic. Realistically, that's not going to happen with Eli.
Yeah. So it's unfortunate it ended that way. I hated it ended that way for Eli. I hated that health issues played into it, and it obviously did. You hate that. But it is also a business, and I know people say so-and-so should get to call their shot out of the business. It's just not the way the business works. It might have one day, but it doesn't anymore.
Yep.
And, Nick Saban was probably the only person at that university that was going to get to call his exit.
I will say, and I don't know how many people put Eli in this category. For whatever reason, I kind of don't. When you look at the Larry Monsons and the John Wards and the Jack Crystals.
It's never been the same to me.
Yeah, it hasn't been the same to me either. Those guys, they pretty much let them die on the mic.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it, but I think it's true.
They did. Yes. And I think those fan bases really wanted that. For whatever reason, I think Eli was polarizing. And unfortunately, when he had the health situation, when Chris came in, I think people looked at it and said, hey, look, I think this could be a better situation.
Yeah. Again, Chris is better to me. But again, two things. I am not unbiased in this. I love Chris. And that's just a matter of taste. Everybody's going to say so-and-so is better than so-and-so. Some of you like the way Lance does the show better. Fewer of you like the way I do it better. Some like the way Jim does it better. That's just a matter of taste.
Yeah, and I was listening to Chris and Brian on the way to Odie's last night. I got to hear probably 5 minutes of game time, and I think Chris does an outstanding job. But the fact of the matter is, I do my best not to listen to play-by-play. Like, I would rather watch the game,
I had
right?
too. Yeah.
So, there's always going to be a need from it, especially at a local level. But it is different, man. When you, and we're dating ourselves here, and there was a time, maybe half the games you had to listen on radio.
Yes. Yeah. That's one reason I know so much about Eli is because, and Jim Five. There were Alabama and Auburn games not on TV. That was your only connection to them.
Yeah, and in those days, guys were like, Eli was a celebrity around town for a while.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Eli had a Corvette.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Had his picture on the wall at Mandarin House.
He did. That's what I was going to say, Rockstar. Yeah. You go into Mandarin House and there's Eli, smiling face.
I think Eli had a personalized tag on that Corvette.
Oh, yeah.
He did.